Accessing Secure Channel. The Agent Files, where aspiring agents rise and masters flourish. Powered by Agent Builder Coaching. Mission initiated. File loading.
Hi there, this is Peter Fan for Agent Builder Coaching, and today I wanted to talk about a subject that is, I guess, a little bit urgent in the sense that there are some actual things happening, but more importantly, it is also kind of a caution, maybe a little bit of help and support for some agents that may be facing this sometime in the future. It's a sign of the times, really. In that context, I would like you to kind of be aware of something. It's the issue of when a brokerage closes. And there are some real examples in the past, but there is some stuff happening recently that gives me, certainly, and some other people in the business some room for caution, because not many realtors have ever gone through this. And as it so happens, I'm one of these old dogs that have had the unfortunate situation of having to be affected by it, not directly personally because of my brokerage, but other brokerages around us that did have a challenge, had to close down, and we're now faced with one in the Lower Mainland. So what happens when a brokerage closes? Now, my experiences have been, again, I've been around for 38, 39 years, thereabouts. So I've seen a few things like this and from different perspectives. So I'm being a managing broker, I've been an agent, I've been an associate broker, I've owned brokerages, I've merged other companies into companies that I've owned. I've purchased assets from companies that have closed down. We've also transitioned from one organization to another organization. So there's ways that this impacts agents and brokerages on a very deep and significant level that you may not have thought about. So if you are facing having to move because your brokerage is closing, or you're concerned about it, this video is really about that. Okay, and I'm sorry that I'm using a long intro, but it is a kind of a very specific application for this. All right. So it's not a normal move, is what I'm trying to get at. So if you were thinking about moving from one brokerage to another brokerage, then it's your time, your dime, your control. You kind of set the agenda. But if all of a sudden you get an announcement that says a week from now the brokerage is closing, or whatever happens that it all of a sudden makes it urgent, you lose a lot of control over your own destiny, and therefore it's pretty important to kind of have a good understanding of what goes on. Now, we put together a free resource. There's no, this is not about recruiting. This none of that. Okay, this is purely informational, and I hope that you get some good stuff out of this and put it on the shelf for as long as you don't need it, but remember it when you do need it. Okay, that's kind of what this is about. So first and foremost, really important, is look after your clients, right? Your client files, your transactions, your relationship with your client. Your managing broker, wherever you are, will probably have told you what will happen, how things will happen, how things will play out, and may have been able to prepare some material for you to deal with the communication with your clients, because those are most important. The listing agreements, contracts of purchase and sales, lease agreements, if that's what you're dealing with. Those relationships are key first and foremost, and they need to be protected at all costs, right? So that's, you got to think about that. And then, obviously the files that are related to that. So do you have all your paperwork, right? So many of the offices nowadays have digital filing systems, and it gives rise to the possibility that you don't have your own paperwork anymore, that it's all in the office, and that's not a good thing. You are actually responsible to have your own files as well as the office. So that's certainly a piece to keep in mind. Okay. Then let's, part of the transactions is, of course, what's happening with the deposits, right? Are there deposits due? Are there deposits in place right now? Where are they? What are they? Is there increases? Is there releases to be dealt with? Is there, if you are thinking, or somebody may be suggesting, we may have to move deposits. Well, if you move a deposit, it's not you know, a few a simple thing. You're actually physically changing the contract, so therefore it has to be authorized and approved by all parties. And that may also involve the conversations with the brokerage, because, of course, there is uh, deposits are often end up being used as part or all of the commission. So that's an important consideration from their perspective, particularly if there are public trustees, creditors. If they are involved in the dissolution of the brokerage, then obviously they have claims, and they may have some protocols that they're requiring to be dealt with. And that's, again, you have to go back to the brokers that you're with in order to get clear directions. Okay. So, um, inevitably, you're going to be talking about and talking with others about all of this that is happening. So you have to be careful what you say, how you say, where you say it. But you have to remain very, very professional. Don't get like don't do any of this stuff on social media at all. I think it's just not advisable to begin with. But but no matter what you say and how you say it, check with your brokerage, with your managing broker, and the rules and regulations. BCFSA is a really, really good source in this regard. They have some pretty good information. In the report that we put together, there are some links to some of the various sources that you might want to check out. Try this. That's a kind of the golden rule. Stay away from speculation. If it isn't factual, if it isn't something that is absolute and verifiable, then don't talk about it. And in many cases, even if it is factual, you can't talk about it in public because it's confidential, right? So your policy manual, your company, rules and regulations, code of ethics, professional standards, all of those prescribe what and how you deal with this type of situation in a professional and appropriate manner. I know it's a roller coaster. I know it's very emotional. It's high stress, and it's very time demanding, and it's almost all consuming. I understand, and I empathize and I sympathize, but that doesn't mean that you need to become unprofessional. In fact, it's really important to slow down, to really just take a moment, right? It's so important that you don't lose sight of the bigger picture, particularly in light of some of the emotions that may be chasing around in your body and your mind, and in all of the conversations that are taking place. So then your next steps are, you've now secured the situation with your clients, you've dealt with the deposits and then what is in play, what is going on, follow the guidance of your brokers and what have you. Then it's time to look at the actual contracts. And I mean, not just your transactional contracts. And yes, you do need to pay attention to that and take stock of that. Who are you dealing with? What is going on? Contracts that you may be contemplating on writing. How does that work, right? If the brokerage is no longer there, do you write them here? Do you write them there? Do you postpone it? It's a very precarious situation to take absolute actions, but you need to act within the best interest of your clients. That's your first and foremost objective. So if they say we want to make an offer, or we want to do this, that, or whatever, then need to fit it inside of what their instructions are. Can't necessarily steer them away from what you think might be the right thing to do. That isn't necessarily in their best interest. Okay. Now, then it's time to look at your own contract with the company, right? Your current ICA, your current policy procedures, your current financial situation with them. Do you owe any money? Do they owe you any money? Is there anything in play that needs to be reviewed and clarified so that you have a complete and balanced perspective of what that looks like and how that flows. So, um, for example, if you have um, had some pre-sales of developments or properties that are still to complete, well, that may become a bit of a challenge because that may reach well beyond the closure of your brokerage. And so that may have some impact on both the contractual part, the deposit part, and any commissions part. Okay, so there's some things in motion there that you may have to specifically get clarification on. Now it gets even a little bit more complicated if you've taken advances on, say, pre-sales or other transactions that may be in place. So that's another aspect to that that also needs to be considered because those advances run through the brokerage, and the brokerage may have had to guarantee the repayment of those advances in the event that the development doesn't go through. Well, those are responsibilities that the brokerage has, but you also have to the brokerage. So all of those things need to be clarified, and you need to become very aware of what that means, right? And because it may impact your financial position quite distinctly in relatively short order. So then there's a whole other aspect in the transition. Now, assuming that you're going to make the move relatively quickly, that also means that all of your marketing, all of your branding, all of your websites, your automations, your registrations as directories, all of those will need to change in relatively short order. So taking stock of that becomes a relatively important part as well. Now, again, BCFSA has a really good advertising and marketing guideline website on their portal, and you can download most of that. So if you're working with assistants or you're working with third-party service providers, you can kind of run through what that means and what that says. In fact, that one website, as a matter of fact, can save you a lot of money in any event, even if you never move from one broker to the next, because it's the guidelines under which they test whether or not you're compliant or not. So it's a good thing to do. Now, there's some questions to ask your current brokers, right? Where are the funds? How are the deals being dealt with now and in the future? Who's responsible for various tasks and activities? So all of those questions are further outlined and detailed in the little report that is attached. And I would encourage you to take a hard look at that. Then I got to talk about it because it's going to happen. You're going to experience an onslaught of agents and brokerages that want to recruit you. That's just a given. It may have already happened if you're in that situation, but if a brokerage changes, that's just part of the deal. And certainly in the current real estate model as it exists, right? There's of course brokerages that want to recruit you, and then there is agents within those brokerages that want to recruit you. Why? Because their business model is based on some sort of reward system for recruiting. That is just a given in the marketplace as we know it today. And that's not all just by cloud brokerages. It is also, traditional format brokerages. So nothing wrong with that, but you need to understand that that's going to happen, and they will try to put you on the spot as to make a decision now versus make the right decision for you. And that's, I guess, what I'm getting at in the context of the recruiting conversations and joining brokerage conversations. It needs to be your terms as much as possible. I know that there's a time crunch, but this is maybe also a really good time for you to take one step back and say, hey, what now that I have some perspective and some understanding of the business, I've had some time in the business, is the right business model this company or that company? What can they add to my business plans, my operations, my structure, my fees, my cost? and not just based on commission, but what can they add to your business that allows you to be more efficient, more effective, more productive, have a better balance of life? Is it psychologically, emotionally, it's morally, ethically, professionally a better or worse fit? Because making a bad decision from one brokerage to the next is as bad as making no decision at all, right? So we used to say in the good old bad old days of traditional brokerages that every move will cost you one or two deals. Why? Because people lose track of you, lose sight of you. They connect with the wrong phone number, or the wrong address, or the wrong what have you, and somehow they kind of lose you. And some people are kind of brand attached as well as you attached, but they also look at the brand and they go like, oh, these with a different brand, or she's with a different brand. I'm going to stick with the brand. So all of these things are important considerations, and one more deal or one less deal can make the difference between you having a nice holiday or having no holiday at all, so to speak. Right. So important questions to consider, and that's why I'm saying it's a reset opportunity as well. Right? It really gives you that kind of little bit of time to say, okay, now that I know where my business is coming from and what I do, what can I add to it from the broker's perspective that will enhance my business opportunities, my results, my balance, my quality, what have you. Right? Now we have included kind of a 2 week kind of suggestion, but I'm going to just run that by you. The first few days, that if something happens in your brokerage, take stock. Don't rush out and go and change your whole world. Take stock. Really become aware of where things are at, what this means to you, what it means to your clients. And find as much balance and a little bit of time and space to kind of collect your thoughts and put things on paper and in the proper perspective. Right. Then take a few days to clarify everything so that you are absolutely 100% sure as to what the situation is and what it means to you. Then you start exploring, right? So do your interviews, do some research, do some checking around, check the BCFSA, talk to BCREA if that's necessary, your real estate board as to what is necessary as far as current listings and what have you. And then, once you have a little bit of kind of a perspective, then decide. And then once you decide, put the pieces in motion to make that happen as smoothly and as practical as possible, from start to finish, and making all the right announcements and statements and adjustments to all the bits and pieces. Right. Now, some people will ask, well, why do brokerages close? Well, there's many different reasons. There are some financial reasons, of course. I mean, actually, a good number of them are financial in one way or another. Whether it is they're no longer profitable, their overhead may be too high. It may be that there's so much competition that it doesn't make sense. One of the things, and if you just look up at the current market conditions, we've come from a very, 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 very active marketplace to relatively quickly go back into to some degree, balanced marketplace. In other places, a very much a slow marketplace. And I'm not talking about buyer's market, seller's market. I'm talking about actual volume of sales, because real estate brokerages and most realtors are much more affected by volume of sales, number of sales, than whether prices are up, down, or sideways. That really doesn't affect commissions all that much, and therefore income all that much. But the number of sales do, of course. Well, that's come off from a very high to a significant lower number. Well, that in itself, most people can work with. But if agents and brokerages have taken on expenses that exceed those now new numbers, now all of a sudden they're between a rock and a hard place, right? You're committed to expenses. You're committed to an overhead that may not be sustainable. So that may be part of the challenge, where all of a sudden a brokerage may have grown from X number of realtors to double that. Well, they've accommodated that by adding space, staff, resources, and now all of a sudden the market is much lower and don't necessarily need all of those expenses anymore. So that's a certainly a reality. Then of course there is retirement. There's a good number of agents and managing brokers and owners that are at an age where they say, I think I'm done. And yeah, there are more severe financial issues, like the most extreme one is probably bankruptcy. But um, as you may or may not know, every brokerage has to file annual reports of solvency and financial activity, and that needs to look healthy. And in some cases, when people prepare those documentation, the brokerages realize that, hey, this is not working the way it was supposed to. And sometimes mergers of brokerages is therefore an option or a possibility. And sometimes it's not. You hope that all of that stuff kind of works, but it doesn't always work all that well in reality, right? You can try to align to bring two brokerages together into one. Sometimes just the business models don't work. Sometimes the organizational structures don't work. Franchises cannot just arbitrarily merge with non-franchises and vice versa. There's franchise agreements. There's all kinds of, legal issues attached to it, and never mind the financial and responsibility, and then exposure of all kinds of individuals and corporate obligations, financial and otherwise. So it's not always that easy to make a merger or an acquisition work, but that may sometimes be a solution. Again, many different reasons why brokerages can get into a situation where they decide, sorry, we can't continue. One thing that I want to point out on that is that it is rarely something that the agents did or didn't do. It's a combination of factors, and yes, money has a significant role in that. Of course, I mean, if the company is super profitable, then and obviously there's oftentimes buyers to find, and sometimes even right within the office itself, that the owners of the company say, hey, we're making part or all of the company available for purchase by the agents. And that has happened in the past quite successfully. Certainly one way. But, in a declining marketplace, that's hard to put together, of course. Right? So it's never one thing. It's always a combination of things. I hope that gives you some insight, some perspective. It's an emotional time, and I sympathize with you. I empathize with you. I feel bad for you. Fortunately enough, I've been able to help a good number of agents through these situations, brokerages through these situations. Like I said, we've bought and brought over agencies in ones and twos at one point in time or another in the 80s and 90s and in the 2000s. So I've been there. I've done that. I've worked with a good number of brokerages to see how they can move through this. It's a stressful period of time, and I feel for you. But you will get through it. You will work through it. There will be a silver lining somewhere in here, and I would encourage you to not panic and to kind of give yourself a little bit of time, and things will work out in some way, shape, or another. Use our little report because there's actually a lot of handy little tips in it. It's completely non-recruiting, and this is not about that. I genuinely want to make sure that you're looked after yourself. If you're going through these situations, that you look after your clients, and yes, look after your commissions and your financial position as well, because on top of that, you never want to lose any money. Unfortunately, in the past, and I'm talking in the 80s and 90s, there have been brokerages that ceased to operate, where commissions were very much lost to agents because creditors had access to that. That's a situation that has become very rare, mainly because we've put in this model of commission trusts, and that protects the commissions from creditors. However, there are some peculiar situations where that doesn't always cover all of the commissions, and so it is important that you do verify and check that out. Again, not a fear tactic. It's just, a prepared person can deal with a lot of things just in advance, and so that it never becomes a problem. All right. I hope this was helpful. If you do feel at some point in time or another that you have some questions that you want to get answered, I'm more than happy to have a chit chat about it and have a confidential conversation. And again, this is not about recruiting, so that will not be part of the conversation. All right. Thank you so very much. All the best. And if you are faced with this, this too shall pass. Okay. All the best and have a fantastic weekend.
File saved. The Agent Files. For more missions, agents' tools, and tactical strategies, subscribe and follow the Agent Files, powered by Agent Builder Coaching. Until next time, stay sharp. Your next mission awaits.